After days of intense and relentless Israeli airstrikes on Gaza, there is now growing evidence that Israel is preparing for an unprecedented ground invasion of Gaza. Israeli ground forces seem to be ready to enter the Gaza Strip, one of the most densely populated places in the world, to fight Hamas, which launched chilling, horrifying and unimaginably savage terror attacks on Israel last Saturday. The Israeli army today said it is ready for a ground assault on Hamas in Gaza, but the country's political leaders are yet to take a decision. The army spokesperson told journalists, "We are waiting to see what our political leadership decides about a potential ground incursion." Over 1,200 Israelis have died in these attacks. Some 1,500 Hamas terrorists have been killed in the Israeli counterattack. At least 1,300 residents of the Gaza Strip have been killed in Israeli airstrikes that have flattened several large buildings into heaps of rubble. If the Israelis do roll into Gaza with a mechanized infantry force along with air support from attack helicopters, a fierce form of urban warfare will break out on the narrow streets and lanes of the Gaza enclave, which has been described as the biggest open-air prison in the world. It is surrounded by Israel, Egypt and the Mediterranean Sea. It is home to 2.3 million people. There are 5,500 people per square kilometer living in Gaza compared to Israel's 400 people per square kilometer. Gaza is completely blockaded, with Israel imposing a total siege in the last few days and cutting off food, water, fuel and power supplies. If the airstrikes, which are already wreaking havoc in the enclave, are indeed followed by a ground invasion, the humanitarian crisis will most certainly spiral rapidly. Hospitals in Gaza are already overwhelmed. The enclave has run out of power. Many believe a ground assault is now inevitable. The public and the national security establishment in Israel are demanding retribution for the horrific terror attacks by Hamas. But a ground invasion would be complicated by Gaza's dense population, its complex underground network of tunnels, and the danger it would pose to Israelis, Americans, and others who are being held hostage by Hamas. Of course, this will be in addition to the grave impact it will have on the Gazans. Former U.S. Defense Secretary and CIA Director Leon Panetta has said, and I quote, "The problem is that it's basically house-to-house fighting once you get into Gaza, and so it could be a heavy price. But on the other hand, it's very clear that Israel has made the decision that they have got to crush Hamas in Gaza." That's what he said. Israel has amassed 300,000 reservists near the Gaza border and a huge mobilization of troops. As we said, more than 1,300 people have been killed in Israeli airstrikes in Gaza and hundreds of thousands have been displaced. The only power station in the Gaza enclave has stopped working. Hospitals there risk turning into morgues without electricity. That is what the International Committee of the Red Cross has said. Gaza's only power plant ran out of fuel on Wednesday and backup generators could stop working in hours. Medical centers have been overwhelmed after Israel imposed a complete siege and pounded the territory with air and artillery strikes. Israel has vowed not to restore electricity or allow basic resources and humanitarian aid into Gaza until Hamas releases around 150 hostages who it abducted during its attacks on Saturday. The Red Cross says as Gaza loses power, hospitals lose power, putting newborns in incubators and elderly patients on oxygen at risk. Kidney dialysis stops and x-rays can't be taken. Hospitals in Gaza are seeing long queues with injured people waiting for emergency rooms. They are running out of essential medical equipment and appealing for blood donations. Children, some seriously wounded, are lying in hospital beds, crying and waiting for treatment. Doctors are now having to make tough decisions about who to operate on as fuel supplies run critically low. Doctors say only life-saving treatment is being carried out in many cases. The absence of humanitarian corridors is resulting in unprecedented problems for hospitals. In previous wars, the Red Cross and the United Nations were able to secure humanitarian corridors to deliver aid, but Israel has not allowed for this yet. Egypt says it has been trying to arrange aid deliveries through its Gaza crossing, but this has been made difficult by Israeli bombardment in the territory. Needless to say, it's a nightmare for the people of Gaza. Meanwhile, India, which has expressed full support for Israel and strongly condemned the terror attacks by Hamas, today made a statement on Palestine, saying, "Our policy in this regard has been long-standing and consistent. India has always advocated the resumption of direct negotiations towards establishing a sovereign, independent and viable state of Palestine, living within secure and recognized borders, side by side, at peace with Israel."
We're delivering on our word, supplying ammunition, interceptors to replenish Israel's Iron Dome alongside other defense materiel. First shipments of U.S. military support have already arrived in Israel, and more is on the way. As Israel's defense needs evolve, we will work with Congress to make sure that they're met. And I can tell you there is overwhelming bipartisan support in our Congress for Israel's security. Here in Israel and everywhere, we will reaffirm the crystal clear warning that President Biden issued yesterday to any adversary, state or non-state, thinking of taking advantage of the current crisis to attack Israel. Don't. The United States has Israel's back.
We are targeting the enemy in order to uproot the capability of the enemy to carry on with this campaign of destroying Israel, trying to destroy it as part of an empire of evil which has its claws all around us, from north, with Hezbollah, from the south, from Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Look around us in the entire region. Look at the havoc that they have created everywhere Iran has touched. In Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq, in Lebanon. So Hamas has carried out war crimes, crimes against humanity. It has chosen to conduct its war against Israel, hiding, as always, within populated areas, using the population as a shield, using mosques, shops, houses, anything of civilian lives as their center of activity. And that is why we're operating to uproot this infrastructure.
India has always advocated the resumption of direct negotiations towards establishing a sovereign, independent and viable state of Palestine, living within secure and recognized borders, side by side, at peace with Israel. And I think that position remains the same. Aware of the developments in Israel. As announced by External Affairs Minister yesterday, Operation Ajay has been launched to facilitate the return from Israel of our citizens who wish to come back. The first charter flight will be reaching Tel Aviv later tonight to pick up Indian citizens and is likely to return to India tomorrow morning. We will share with you information about further flights as they are finalized. This is still an evolving situation. You are aware, External Affairs Minister took a preparatory meeting earlier in the day. We're also in touch with our, of course, with our embassy in Tel Aviv, our representative office in Ramallah, as well as with our neighboring, the missions in our neighboring, in the neighboring countries. There, one citizen who was there, I think, injured. Yes, we are aware of that case. Of course, we are in touch with them. I understand the person is in hospital, but I think it's improving or has better situation. We are also, of course, thankfully have not heard of any Indian casualty so far.
There was a dual attack by the terror organization of Hamas from Gaza. They started by bombardment with rockets, which we are used to. It's not the first time. It happened in the past many times. But in parallel, close to 1,000 terrorists infiltrated into different Jewish communities in Israel, small ones, kibbutzim on the border, around the border, kibbutzim, villages, agricultural villages, and even cities, and went from house to house and slaughtered and killed more than 1,000 civilians. In total, 1,200 people were murdered, as we know now, and the pictures are ISIS-like pictures. It's terrible. They burned people in their houses, whole families executed, beheading. I don't want to go into graphics, but what you imagine about the stories of ISIS This is what happened there. Hamas became ISIS. It's unbelievable. And in parallel, there was also a party of young people, about 3,000 young people. We have these open fields festivals. They went there on the pickup trucks, as you know from ISIS pictures, with machine guns, and just started killing people. And this was not enough. Young people, terrible story, terrible issue. 260 people died there, at least, that we know for now. But they also abducted up to 150, around 150 people back into Gaza.